It's my kind of filth. I love it. Joining me now in studio to discuss the new season of Dirty Jobs.
Well, there have been many that I've said, no, I'd rather not do that, but my only job on that show is to try, right? So if I did anything smart in this whole crazy...
For years, Mike Rowe has been the face of America's toughest, dirtiest, and most dangerous jobs, climbing into sewers, crawling through toxic factories, working shoulder to shoulder with blue-collar workers who keep the country running. But behind the humor, grit, and larger-than-life personality lies a mystery fans have whispered about for over a decade. And now, that mystery has finally been solved. And the truth is far worse than anyone expected. It all begins with a long-buried incident from the early seasons of Dirty Jobs. An incident the network never aired and Mike never fully addressed. Rumors circulated among crew members, production assistants, and even the workers he visited. Something happened, something big enough that the network tried to bury it. Fans speculated endlessly about it, and Mike Rowe himself avoided speaking about it directly. But just days ago, new information surfaced that finally exposes what really happened, and why Mike has carried the weight of this secret for so long. What the team discovered wasn't just a dangerous mistake or an extreme mishap on set. It was something that changed the way Mike looked at the American workforce, the show itself, and even his own future. For years, the truth was hidden, protected by contracts, confidentiality agreements, and a loyalty Mike felt toward the very people whose stories he was trying to tell. Now the truth is out, and it's not just shocking, it's heartbreaking, infuriating, and revealing all at once. This is the mystery. Fans have waited years to understand. This is the moment everything finally makes sense, and this is the part of Mike Rowe's story nobody was ever supposed to hear. Long before Dirty Jobs became one of the most iconic shows on television, Mike Rowe was still figuring out how far he could push himself, and how far the network was willing to let him go. In those early days, the show was raw, unpredictable, and dangerously authentic. Mike wanted to show the real America, the hidden workforce that kept the country running. But in the process, he and his crew walked into situations far more dangerous than viewers ever realized. One of those situations took place during the filming of an episode that has never aired. It was supposed to be a routine segment, another day on the job, another grueling task in a remote corner of the country. Mike and the crew arrived at a facility known for harsh conditions and hazardous waste. They had dealt with toxic environments before, but this one came with warnings that felt more serious than anything they had heard previously. From the moment they walked in, something felt wrong. The smell was stronger, the air heavier, and the workers quieter than usual. Mike had learned that silence from experienced laborers was the first sign of danger. They knew something he didn't, but the cameras were rolling, and Mike pushed forward, determined to capture the reality of the work. Within the first hour of filming, it became clear that this job was different. The crew noticed unusual leaks, makeshift repairs, and areas taped off so hastily that they felt more like cover-ups than safety measures. Every step stirred up dust and fumes that clung to clothes and burned the throat. Even the workers, hardened by years on the job, kept a distance from certain sections, urging Mike to follow their lead. But what happened next forced everything to a halt. Mike had just stepped into a lower access tunnel, a cramped, dimly lit space that workers insisted was mostly safe as long as nobody stayed too long. Suddenly, a deep metallic groan echoed above them. The walls vibrated. Then a burst of pressure shot through the tunnel, releasing a cloud of chemicals so dense the crew's lights disappeared into it. Chaos erupted. The workers shouted warnings, the crew scrambled back, and Mike, momentarily blinded and choking from the fumes, was pulled out by a veteran employee who knew the layout by heart. The cameras captured everything: the collapse of a pipe system, the wave of toxic air, and the panic that spread across the facility. Production immediately shut down. Emergency crews arrived. Safety inspectors flooded the site, and for the first time in the show's history, the network ordered all footage locked away. Not a frame of it would ever be shown. Contracts were rewritten. Crew members were silently briefed. The facility faced serious consequences, but much of what happened behind the scenes was carefully managed to avoid public scandal. As for Mike, the incident left a mark deeper than anyone realized. He had built Dirty Jobs on authenticity, on showing the good, the bad, and the ugly of American labor. But what he witnessed that day wasn't just ugly, it was catastrophic. It exposed problems within an industry struggling to survive with outdated infrastructure and dangerous shortcuts. And it showed Mike just how close he had come to a disaster that could have ended more than just the show. That day changed him. It changed the crew. It changed Dirty Jobs. The mystery surrounding the incident grew over the years, whispered about by those who were there but never confirmed publicly. Mike continued the series, but with sharper instincts, stricter safety demands, and a new understanding of how fragile the line was between storytelling and survival. What happened that day became the origin of the Dirty Jobs mystery, the one fans always sensed but never fully understood. And now, with new information coming to light, Mike Rowe's silence finally makes sense. That in the days following the catastrophic incident, the Dirty Jobs production team found themselves in a whirlwind of investigations, emergency briefings, and closed-door meetings. What had started as a simple filming session had turned into a full-scale crisis, one that threatened the safety of the crew, the reputation of the network, and the future of the show itself. Mike Rowe, normally calm and good-humored even under extreme pressure, suddenly found himself in the middle of a situation far bigger than he ever imagined. The first shock came when the facility's management tried to downplay the severity of the incident. Despite the leaking pipes, toxic fumes, and the near collapse that nearly trapped Mike underground, the administrators insisted that what happened was a minor malfunction. They pushed the narrative that the crew had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the workers who had pulled Mike to safety told a very different story. According to them, this wasn't new. It wasn't rare. It wasn't unexpected. The system had been failing for years. What bothered Mike the most was how quickly corporate officials arrived, much faster than local safety authorities. Within hours, a team of lawyers, executives, and PR specialists filled the facility's small administrative office. They spoke quietly, firmly, and with a sense of urgency that made the crew uneasy. Some members of the production team were separated and interviewed alone, pressured to stick to a specific version of the story. There were attempts to confiscate memory cards, cameras, and even audio recordings. It became clear that the footage captured that day was more valuable and more dangerous than anyone first realized. Mike watched all of this unfold with growing suspicion. He had always believed in transparency, in showing the truth of America's toughest jobs. But what he was seeing now wasn't truth, it was control. The network seemed to be caught in the crossfire between telling an honest story and protecting itself from backlash. And the facility's management was desperate to hide the fact that their operations had become a ticking time bomb. The workers, many of whom trusted Mike more than their own bosses, quietly approached him during breaks in the chaos. They revealed everything: how the equipment had been failing for years, how warnings had been ignored, how injuries had gone unreported, and how inspectors had been given special tours that avoided the most dangerous areas. One worker even admitted that they feared something like this would happen during the filming, because the presence of cameras usually forced management to clean up or cover up hidden issues. Mike felt torn. He wanted to expose the truth, but the network was already moving to shut the entire event down. They claimed the footage was too graphic, too dangerous, too controversial to air. But the crew knew the real reason. Airing the footage would expose negligence, corruption, and years of hidden violations. It would spark investigations. It would ruin reputations. And it would show the world the cost of ignoring safety for profit. Within a week, the network declared the episode permanently shelved. Contracts were updated with strict confidentiality clauses. Crew members were told to forget what happened and move on. The footage was locked away in a secure archive, accessible only to top executives. No one was allowed to speak about the incident again, not publicly, not privately, not even among themselves. But Mike couldn't shake it. What happened wasn't just another dangerous job, it was something fundamentally wrong with how these industries operated. It showed him the hidden suffering of workers, the silent dangers of neglected infrastructure, and the fragile reality of the blue-collar world he had been trying to honor. The mystery surrounding the incident didn't disappear, it grew. Fans sensed something was off. Certain episodes were missing. Mike became increasingly cautious on set. And over the next few years, subtle rumors began circulating. A lost episode, a near-fatal accident, a cover-up, and a moment that changed Mike Rowe forever. And they were right. That moment did change him. But the most shocking part was still to come. For years, Dirty Jobs had been known for its gritty honesty. Mike Rowe never sugar-coated anything. If a job was disgusting, dangerous, or downright miserable, he showed it exactly as it was. Fans admired him for that. But that wasn't the worst part. Between the barrels lay evidence-sold clothing, tools, half-buried equipment suggesting people had been working in this space long before the site claimed operations had ended. The implication was chilling. Workers had likely been exposed to toxic chemicals without protection, without knowledge, without oversight. Mike Rowe had covered dangerous jobs before. He had seen men and women risk their lives daily. But this was different. This wasn't a hazardous job, it was a covered up. If the show filmed any of this, the network would be dragged into a legal battle. The company might face federal investigation. Workers could come forward with health issues. Lives could be ruined. Mike stepped back and said only one sentence: "We can't film here anymore." Word spread through the crew. Production halted instantly. The network demanded details. The company begged them to continue filming only the safe areas. Lawyers got involved. Confusion turned to chaos. But for Mike, there was no debate. The integrity of Dirty Jobs, the very thing that built the show, meant he couldn't be part of exposing people to danger they didn't understand. And that's when the real shock came. The company tried to blame the discovery on the show. They claimed the crew broke into a restricted building. They accused Mike of trespassing. They even threatened to sue. The network panicked. Sponsors pulled back. For a moment, it looked like the show might end right then. And they're not because of ratings, not because of creative changes, but because a real-life disaster had been uncovered by accident. But Mike refused to back down. He pushed for an independent investigation. And when evidence confirmed the site was indeed hiding toxic waste illegally, the entire situation exploded publicly. The episode was never aired. The location was never revealed. But inside the Dirty Jobs crew, that day became known simply as the mystery episode, the one that almost destroyed everything. And for Mike Rowe personally, it marked a turning point, a moment when the dirty job wasn't the one on camera. It was the one he uncovered behind it. When the truth about the hidden toxic site came out, Mike Rowe thought the worst was over. The barrels had been reported. The investigation had begun. The crew was safe, and Dirty Jobs had avoided filming something that could have endangered millions of viewers' trust. But what came next blindsided everyone. The production went on pause officially for review, but internally, everyone knew something much bigger was happening. The discovery had triggered a chain reaction. Lawyers, regulators, corporate boardrooms, even federal agencies were now involved. Mike had stumbled into something far more dangerous than sludge pits or sewer lines. He had uncovered corruption. At first, Mike tried to keep his head down. He trusted that the system would take care of the problem. After all, he wasn't a whistleblower, he was a TV host. But the company whose site he exposed wasn't going to let the situation unfold quietly. They went after him personally. Anonymous emails appeared. Threats, accusations, attempts to twist the story. Someone leaked false claims that Mike had staged the barrels for publicity. Another rumor suggested the entire incident was scripted for ratings. Online forums lit up with debates, some calling him a hero, others calling him a fraud. None of it was true, but the damage was spreading. The network, terrified of litigation, pulled back from supporting him publicly. Meetings became tense. Executives asked him to stay quiet for now. The message was clear. They wanted to protect the show, not necessarily the man who carried it. For the first time in years, Mike felt isolated. Meanwhile, the crew, his people, were shaken. They'd always trusted their environments, believing the danger they faced every day was controlled. Now they realized the danger could come from the very companies they worked with. Morale dropped. Some questioned whether they wanted to continue at all. And Mike felt responsible. Weeks later, the report from investigators confirmed everything he had feared. The company had intentionally stored illegal toxic waste on site for years. Workers had been exposed. Safety logs were falsified. Environmental fines were pending. It was a disaster waiting to happen, and Dirty Jobs had accidentally uncovered it. But the report also mentioned something else, something devastating. A worker who had once handled materials in that sealed-off building had passed away months earlier from a rare illness. His family had complained, but the company buried the case under lack of evidence. Now, with this new discovery, his story resurfaced. His daughter reached out to the Dirty Jobs team, hoping Mike could confirm whether her father's job might have contributed to his early death. Mike read her message 3 times before responding. Up until then, the situation had felt like a legal nightmare, something complicated, corporate, distant. But the moment he heard from the family, it became painfully real. This wasn't just a scandal, it was a tragedy, and suddenly, walking away didn't feel like an option. Mike decided to speak out, but not through the network, not through lawyers. He addressed the issue directly in a long, heartfelt video, focusing not on blame, but on responsibility. He said the kinds of things networks hated: honest things, uncomfortable things. He talked about the workers who risk their lives for jobs no one else sees. He talked about negligence. He talked about accountability. He talked about the human cost of corporate shortcuts. The video went viral instantly. And that's when everything changed. The network panicked. They scolded him privately, but publicly they couldn't touch him. The audience was overwhelmingly on his side. People praised him for exposing something that could have remained buried forever. Workers from across the country shared their own stories of unsafe conditions. It became a national conversation, one Mike had never intended to start. But the backlash wasn't finished. The company involved filed a defamation complaint, claiming Mike exaggerated the danger. The network considered canceling the episode indefinitely. Sponsors pulled ads. Lawyers arranged emergency calls behind closed doors. Executives blamed him for escalating the situation. Behind screens, millions thanked him for speaking the truth. And somewhere in between, Mike Rowe found himself at a crossroads. He had spent years celebrating the dignity of hard, honest work, but now he was staring straight at the ugly side of labor, the side no one wanted televised, the side people preferred to ignore. The mystery was solved, the truth was out, but the cost was higher than he ever imagined. In the end, Dirty Jobs survived, but it was never the same. Because once Mike Rowe saw what was hidden in that building, once he saw what companies were capable of concealing, he understood something he had never fully confronted before. Some jobs aren't dirty because of mud, grime, or sludge. Some jobs are dirty because the people in power make them dangerous.